This is a teaching on self-righteousness. I'm not asking you to believe what I'm saying. My hope is that through these teachings, we will be able to conserve the wisdom of our past while liberating ourselves from the bullshit of our past. Hi, my name is Trav, and I've been singing the Trans-Rational Blues. We might define self-righteousness as an over-identification with persona, or an individual's unhelpful attachment to their own worldview, gifting, or skill sets. To truly understand self-righteousness, we must face it in ourselves. Here's how I know it in me. We may discover self-righteousness in our individual strengths, or we may discover self-righteousness in our association with a group. Sometimes it is our personal gifting or strength that earns us a place in a group. Sometimes our position in a group does not depend on our gifting, our skill, or our talent. Sometimes we identify with a group by professing belief. We may change our outward appearance by wearing a uniform or cultural clothing. Group attitudes and mannerisms are sometimes enough to gain acceptance or even to come into a sense of self-righteousness. We are often very quick to adopt cultural standards when we are compensated monetarily for doing so. When we join the military, we agree to lose our individuality in the group identity. We surrender our hair, and we surrender our will to a centralized government. We agree to follow any orders that are given to us, even when that means killing other people that we do not know. Being a part of something bigger than ourselves, believing in the righteousness of our government, allows us to have a sense of wholeness or a sense of belonging. George Orwell wrote a lot about nationalism. In his book 1984, he said this: I am qualified to speak on these matters because I have surrendered myself to the fear-based educational systems of both the United States military and the local police. And, in my efforts to heal my inner wounds, I have also subjected myself to religious fundamentalism. The religious folks told me that they had the answer, and I was just broken enough to believe them. Religious fundamentalism might be described as appropriation of sacred story to serve empire, or appropriation of sacred story to serve small mind, false self, or ego. It is very important to always remember that the only way to defeat any form of self-righteousness is to allow it to be uncovered in our individual storyline. We have to discover it in ourselves. Again, we defeat religious fundamentalism, self-righteousness, only by discovering it in ourselves. As I mentioned before, religion is not the only place that we might encounter self-righteousness. Also, we should understand that we cannot avoid self-righteousness by simply avoiding religion. Religion is a great place for us to learn about ourselves, but it is not our final stop. And we are free to join all the religions we like to finally get over ourselves. However, because religion is a genre that requires no particular skill set, we can hide in it for a long time with no skin in the game. I suggest that you take up a form that requires chops, skill, development. Once you develop chops, you will be able to clearly see your own small-minded self-righteousness. Here we go. Come on. Travelin' Trav's Trans-Rational Blues. We tend to study and develop ourselves along lines of our natural gifting. And also, it is in our natural gifting where we can most successfully enter into a study of self-righteousness. We discover self-righteousness where we are most naturally gifted. The natural course of self-righteousness is to break our hearts wide open. In other words, once we see our own self-righteousness in the context of that which we love the most, our most natural gifting, It breaks our heart, hopefully. Religion is a common or a traditional place to discover our own self-righteousness. But we may discover self-righteousness in any practice. Any form in which we feel elevated above the normal human experience is sufficient to show us our own self-righteousness eventually. I was born into a deeply dysfunctional familial system in which I was told that shame was love. However, at 14 years old, I discovered music. The XY axis on the neck of the guitar ordered my life. It was on the neck of my guitar that I first discovered devotion. And as I devoted myself to the music that seemed to be discovering me, I also found myself valuable in musical community. You might think of music being my first religion. It was the first place where I discovered the depth of self. Music is where I discovered my creative nature, my divine nature, my God nature. Do you remember how earlier I defined self-righteousness as over-identification with persona, or an individual's unhelpful attachment to their own worldview, gifting, or skill set? Because I was born into a familial situation in which I was in deep need of love that I couldn't get, I was bound to over-identify with any skill set that I discovered, and music is that first place where I over-identified. What do I mean when I say over-identified? Well, I thought I was a musician. I thought that was my identity. I am describing here my privilege, right? I was privileged to have the time and the energy and the gifting to make these deep explorations. 8 years later, at the age of 22, I would discover salvation again in the form of sacred text or symbolic language in the form of the New Testament and the story of Jesus. I was told by the religious folks at that time that I had received the whole enchilada in the Bible. It turns out, however, that sacred text is very much like the neck of a guitar. The neck of guitar is not music, nor is the sacred text the word, or the final word. Earlier, I said that you don't have to have any chops to be in religion, but the chops in religion are the stories, or the word, or our capacity to speak, to pronounce the word in some fashion, to deliver hope and faith and love to others. Whichever form or practice or religion we take up, we should exhaust ourselves fully in the pursuit of that. We should allow it to pass from us, to die in us. And then we'll also find that we can come back to those forms once we realize that those forms are not the final say, that the guitar neck is not music, that a sacred text is not the divine presence. There is in each of us a conservative and a liberal. The conservative is that which is conserving the wisdom of our past. The liberal is that one in us which is liberating us from the bullshit of our past. I believe that we honor our ancestors when we free ourselves or allow ourselves to be freed from that bondage. It's one of the big human stories, the journey from bondage into freedom. Together, we can discover our common work, our common stories, and our common love, labor, and the expression of worth. L&TEOW, Travelin' Travs, Travelin' Stream Camp, strengthening a tribe member, deepens a tribe, depth tribes feed the world. Travelin' Travs, TransRationalBlues. Come on, y'all.